Marketing is a podcast for business owners and leaders, produced by my dad, Steve Davis, and his colleague at Talked About Marketing, David Olney, in which they explore marketing through the lens of their own 4 Ps: person, principles, problems, and perspicacity. Yes, you heard that correctly. Apart from their love of words, they really love helping people. So they hope this podcast will become a trusted companion on your journey in business.
David, have you ever been in an ambulance as a patient?
I have.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah, when I ruptured my kidney, the pain was gratuitous, and I thought, I really need to go to the hospital. And I was able to, literally walk out and step up in and lay down on the thing and talk to the person all the way there, despite the fact I'd already ruptured a kidney.
Did you enjoy it? Because I've always thought it'd be a great experience to be in an ambulance.
Put it this way, I was really glad of the distraction of talking to a really calm paramedic when I was going, why the hell does it feel like there's a fire in the left side of my body?
Hold that thought, because we're going to dive deeper into the world of paramedics in just a moment in this episode of Talking About Marketing. Don't dial 000 just yet.
Our 4 Ps. Number 1, person. The aim of life is self-development. To realise one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde.
In the person segment, we're venturing into some unknown territory because we're about to draw some insights from a book that only one of us has read.
Only a minor problem.
It is a minor problem. So this is like being on the SA Variety Bash with one side of your car's tyres being flat.
Or only half your monkey costume.
Or half your monkey costume, that's right. So the book we're talking about is called The Paramedic Mindset by Leigh Anderson. David, you're the one who's read this book. You reckon there's some beautiful thoughts from this distilled that we could all benefit from in life.
Yeah, this is a great book. Leigh Anderson's a really interesting guy. His aim was to become a professional rugby player, and he kept having knee problems. And by the 3rd surgery, he got a monumental infection. And this really meant this is the end of my rugby career. But then the infection started getting out of control, and he was rushed to hospital multiple times as they tried to treat it. And he had the realization these paramedics who are looking after me are amazing. Like, I'm scared out of my mind. I don't know whether potentially I'm going to end up with a fused knee or perhaps even losing my leg. And they keep making me feel like it's going to be okay and looking after me. So he decided to become a paramedic. And the wonderful thing about the book is he argues that the way to be a really good paramedic is to always aim to grow and to be clear what you need to grow into. And he breaks it down into 4 things. What competence do you need to do the thing you want to do? You've got to focus on becoming so good at the technical side of what you want to do that you can just do it and have energy for the human stuff, the social stuff, the psychological stuff.
I need to interrupt there because he's not the first person to have talked about competency. Who was it you were referring to in some previous episodes? Competency before confidence?
It was a thing I learnt from one of my first mobility teachers that taught me to use a white cane, Rolly Stewart. Literally the way Rolly taught was competence first, so you could then have more confidence, so you could be confident to work harder and take, small calculated risks to up your competence. And Leigh Anderson's book is great because in one chapter he talks about a thing called the competence cycle, which I've never seen literature about the competence cycle before. And we can either talk about it today or save it for another episode because the competence cycle in and of its own right is really interesting.
Well, I think that is something to come back to, perhaps once I've read the book in a principle segment. But if we stick to the person segment at the moment, once we've got that, you were talking about
3 other things.
3 other areas where if we look after ourselves there, we can flourish as humans.
So the 3 things Leigh talks about other than competence is physical well-being, psychological well-being, and social well-being. And he literally includes some tools in the book, designed by psychologists and scientists to measure how you're going, to go, are you doing okay? So you've at least got a baseline. Do you need to do more? Do you just need to maintain where you are? But to make sure that you are physically well, psychologically well, and socially connected, and getting the kind of human connection you need to flourish. And I love the fact that instead of saying, be alpha, everything will be fine, he's saying, no, you've got to work at doing well and flourishing every day, and you've got to break it down into its constituent parts. And on top of competence, you've got to think about how are you going to stay physically well or get physically well, how are you going to stay or get psychologically well, and how are you going to stay or get socially well. And the whole book is wonderful examples from his career and his life of where he's been tested to his limits in the job, and then reflecting on, well, how did I do okay that day? I did okay because I did the work.
Before we take a look at a concept known as the mental health continuum, we need to understand the difference between mental illness and mental health. These two states are, of course, interconnected, but there's a big difference between the two. Mental illness is more concerned with disease. It's a general term that refers to a group of illnesses that significantly affect how a person behaves, thinks, and interacts with the world. Mental illness is diagnosed by professionals according to standardized criteria. Types of mental illness include clinical depression, major depressive disorder, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and others. Mental illness has, at least recently, been the focus of mainstream medicine and society, but as a consequence, our mental health has been forgotten. Mental health is a broader term that incorporates functioning beyond the threshold of clinical syndromes such as anxiety and depression. Factors that support good mental health include positive self-esteem, warm and trusting relationships, motivation and openness to learn from challenges and improve as a person. Mental health could thus be considered as a state in which our psychological functions allow us productive activities, fulfilling relationships with people, and the ability to adapt to change and cope with stress. Identifying the distinction between mental illness and mental health is important, because the absence of mental illness does not mean that a person is mentally well, i.e., flourishing. Mental health involves positive feelings and functioning well in life. It could be considered a precursor or enabling state that can support flourishing. If someone suffers from poor mental health, they're likely to feel as though they're languishing and stuck. An absence of good mental health doesn't mean they're depressed. It just means they're in a mental state of stagnation. They can still go to work and complete day-to-day tasks, but they derive no satisfaction from it. It's a drag. If they were taking an exam, they would aim for 51% and nothing more. Sociologist and psychologist Dr. Corey Keyes describes mental health as the presence of emotional well-being in conjunction with high levels of social and psychological functioning. A person with mental health has poise, which helps them flourish and thrive. Most of us are quick to judge and might diagnose ourselves with a mental illness when we are feeling low, but really, we probably have poor mental health. By focusing on flourishing, we start to prevent mental illness rather than trying to find a cure after a diagnosis. Prevention is always better than a cure.
It's just a great book, and I've recommended it to young people who want to be nurses, young people who want to be teachers, young people who want to be soldiers, and recommend it to a lot of people just to read as if you're going to sort of try and pick up one more or less stoically informed book, but stoicism in a very practical, modern, non-ancient Roman way. Leigh is a wonderful example of how to practically help yourself and be a good example for anyone of just how to make sure you do better in the world and contribute effectively because you are doing well.
Do you get a sense from the book as to what made him this unicorn that was able to have these experiences but then reflect on them to the point that he was going to share? Or is that
I really think it was that the world of heading towards professional sport, he was at the top of his game at 17. It all looked like professional rugby was ahead of him, and his world disappeared and he had to find another one. And he realised that rugby had come easy. Becoming a paramedic, he had to work and work and work and work. But guess what? when he did the work and he defined the work properly, that it's not just about doing well in the course. It's about dealing with people on their worst day. When he got out in the job and he realised if you don't look after your physical, psychological and social well-being, this job will crush you because you're seeing people at their worst. Leigh Anderson is just the most wonderful, reflective person. And hang on, I want to do this well and this is crushing me. What do I do so I can do it well and not be crushed and actually thrive doing it well?
So is the shorthand physical, making sure you move, whether that's going to the gym or eating well, that sort of thing?
Sleep is the other big thing, particularly working shifts like paramedics do.
Okay. Psychological well-being, I mean, sleep plays a definite role there. I mean, that does movement.
Yep.
But what's he talking about from a psychological perspective? Just a short version here for this segment for us. What is he alluding to?
Admit when you've been through something extreme and talk to someone.
Okay.
Stay positive, but not ludicrously positive. But, if it's a day where things are going poorly, say, well, this is a hard work day, but gee, that coffee was nice. Okay. Find something in the day that puts positive back in. Make sure that you maintain good relationships with the people around you, because the more isolated you become, that's going to mess up your psychological well-being and then your social well-being. And in terms of the social well-being, he talks about the fact that paramedics all go through the same grim days and develop the same grim, dark sense of humour. But if you don't talk about what happened, you're not going to cope well, build good relationships, maintain good relationships. Like in the book, he talks about having to go to an address and realising it's one of his colleagues, and he's terrified that she suicided. And he's like, well, this is the point where he realised if we don't look after our psychological well-being and our social well-being, then things like this will happen where you have the fear that your colleague has suicided because she hasn't looked after her psychological well-being and we together haven't looked after our social well-being. So some of the lessons are very stark, but very powerful.
Yet again, the theme we touched on last week as I reflected on the beauty of being away from this digital world on the SA Variety Bash in the middle of nowhere. Here again, what he's alluding to is if we put these darn phones down for a while and pay attention to the flesh and blood around us, we at least have taken a step in the right direction to find something that our age-old, slowly evolved bodies and minds can latch onto.
Absolutely. Like it's about getting the competence side of things out the way so you can focus on what keeps you and the people around you well. And that works so much better if that's what you're focused on.
So if you are thinking about a book that you might want to read, it does sound like The Paramedic Mindset by Leigh Anderson is just what the doctor ordered.
Our 4 Ps. Number 2, principles. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. Oscar Wilde.
Interestingly, we started quite incidentally, David, with a story. I asked if you'd been in an ambulance and you told us about that account, which brings us nicely into principles, because the book you want to talk about, we've both read, it's called Story or Die by Lisa Cron. We have previously spoken about the story brand framework, and this is, well, I wouldn't say a pigeon pair, but it's a complementary book.
You're very complimentary.
Yeah. So what's your take on Lisa Cron and her approach to this book and the way that it differs from Donald Miller and the Story Brand Framework?
First thing I'll say is the title is very cringy and nearly put me off. Right. Second thing, the way the book is written is cringy and at times nearly put me off.
Yeah, same here.
I don't know who she thought the core audience for the book were going to be, but I don't think it was us. It was like she was writing for very childlike adults. And that's annoying in places. But what's so great about the book is she explains all the neurology and psychology of why telling stories is the ultimate way to have a positive effect on people. It's what people understand. It's what people value. It's what makes people change their mind and take action. And literally this is why the book is called Story or Die. It fits very well to read in parallel with Donald Miller's work on the story brand system, because Donald Miller's got a great system. The 7 steps work brilliantly. But we, of course, get clients occasionally go, why?
Yes.
And Donald's whys are the practical whys of a screenwriter marketing guy. Well, I can tell you it works because I've done it 100 times and it worked 99. Whereas by the time you finish Lisa Cron's book, you understand which bit of the brain is responding, why things resonate with us. And it gives you an ability to see the power of the story brand system, in a deeper way. But also, you can't really use SB7 in every conversation. But you can keep Lisa Cron's 2 core points in every conversation. And the 2 core points are actually relatively straightforward to remember. If you want to change what people think, change what they feel. And if you want to change what they feel, you have to tell a story that connects with their agenda. And if you can remember those 2 things in every conversation, you're in a much better position to positively influence people.
The realization that surprised me most was this. What grabs us, what pulls us in and makes us care, are not the external events, regardless how overtly dramatic. An earthquake, a tsunami, an asteroid obliterating all of downtown Akron can be so startlingly boring that you start to wonder if there's something wrong with you. There isn't. Because what makes those situations riveting is the internal effect they're having on someone we care about. Without that, they're just random facts, regardless how objectively dramatic. Here's the secret. As counterintuitive as it may seem, a story isn't about what happens in the world. A story is about what happens in the mind of the protagonist, the person through whose eyes we're experiencing those events.
I did find her start of writing a breath of fresh air to start with, but then it did become quite tedious.
Yeah.
It's like riding a bike in first gear the whole way.
Yeah.
She comes to this making the point that you can't just say, look, I need you to do X, Y, Z, just do it. Use of story sits well above the realm of instruction, because there's something about when a story begins that our brain, a different part of the brain or a different mode of the brain seems to be engaged. It listens differently. It's almost like I had my computer in the shop earlier this week having some things done. I can make tinkering changes to the computer, but they got right into the motherboard and they made some fundamental shifts. Story seems to have that potential.
It's like the whole brain pays attention and the chattering monkey inside our head that's wondering about pizza and peanuts shuts up for a bit. Because story is so important. We remember stories because it's another human telling us the story. And we might go through the same experience and we might learn to deal with that experience. Like, story just fits with us as a species that uses language, that cares about, our sort of clan and cohort. Story is just so deeply important to us. And we understand it both at an intellectual and a visceral level. And I think anything that can get left and right brain both quietly engaging with the same thing and not wanting to butt in because stories are so interesting, we want to know what happens, is just, there's a real power to how story works in relation to our brains.
And the 2 principles that you talked about before, can you recall from the book an anecdote or 2 that helps bring them to life, that enfleshes them a little bit to take it from the abstract into some sort of practical example?
I found her scientific evidence convincing. I found her anecdotes cringy, so I, as fast as I possibly could, just started testing out these ideas of, if you want to change what someone thinks, change what they feel. And the way to change what people feel is to tell them a story that relates to their already existing agenda. So I started doing things like, when I was talking to someone going, Oh, I remember you telling me that you really care about this. Is this still something you're working on or you want to achieve? Yes. Well, this thing relates to that in this way and would help you get this outcome. And suddenly they want to spend money or take action. So I was able to prove instantly that the two things work just by following the logic of it. What is someone's agenda? How can I get them to change what they feel about something in relation to their agenda? And if I can get them to change what they feel, then they're going to change what they think.
Gee, that was tapping into a bit of Robert Cialdini there.
Yeah, but far more effective than like I read Cialdini and I'm like, yeah, you're a great academic, but this book is about 11 hours too long. Like that book also would make a great pamphlet.
If someone bailed you up, David, and said, okay, this is great, I'm in my small business, how can Story or Die have any practical use in my business today?
Okay, I'm going to use the example of, let's imagine that your small business is a nice little pizza shop. You've got a nice little pizza place where people can eat in on some pretty basic furniture, have some affordable reds. Like, really, why do people come and get pizza from you? Ideally, it tastes nice. But do you remember their name? Do you remember what thing they like? Do you remember what variation they like on their pizza? Do you remember that someone in their family doesn't like prawns? Do you remember all these things? Do you remember their story? And do you make them feel valued? Because if you do, you've just changed how they feel. And they're going to come in and buy your pizza, not just because your pizza's nice, but because you remember them and value them, and that makes them feel different.
It is hilarious that you just mentioned that, because Tuesday night I snuck into Ross Trevor Pizza Bar, which is our local, and I just noticed for the first time, I'd known it. We've been here since 2006, so fairly regular patrons. We know the family, Gaetano and Tony and Nadia and LJ in the front of house. They know us by name. They know what we want. But I noticed Nadia the other night making a point, like Gaetano has all the way through. Gaetano's the owner. He's been standing there making pizza for more than 40 years. She took the time to go and chat to the table of people having a party, and they always seem to do that. And that is the human bond that they've woven for decades.
So they know what people want when they come in for a party. They remember that family when they come in for next year's birthday.
But the family remembers that they know them.
Precisely. Works both ways.
They feel known.
Yep. And that has a huge impact. And, by coming out and going, was everything the way you like it? Well, they trust you're going to remember anything you say about, this was great. And that flow-on thing of you've told a story or talked to someone about something they care about.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you've changed how they feel, which will change how they think. And that is, well, there's other pizza places, but why would we go there?
Exactly. I mean, that doesn't hurt that their pizza's magnificent.
Yeah.
But I like having a little sprinkle of Parmesan on my pizza. So without even asking, they always bring that out for me.
Yep.
And there's a little inside baseball tip. The Mexicana with some pepperoni added is just divine. There you go. That's a little tip. But thank you, David. And Story or Die? Do you want that half and half, or are you doing the lot?
We'll put chili on the whole thing.
Our 4 Ps. Number 3, problems. I asked the question for the best reason possible. Simple curiosity. Oscar Wilde.
In the problem segment, I've just seen yet another way that these lazy scammers are just trying to get that booking with you. And it's the old 1-2, David. The old 1-2. You're familiar with the 1-2?
Is this like Costa Zoo or his son Nicky, where they punch people?
Something like that. But what they've done is you get all these cold emails. Hey, we can do this and you're going to benefit like this. Have you got 15 minutes? Let's have a call. Okay? That's now old hat. What is happening increasingly is this. I got an email. Hi, Steve. My colleague, Lena, the COO of Fienta, suggested I reach out. We'd love to explore whether we could help make your ticketing a bit smoother, better for your bottom line and more audience-friendly for your shows. Would you be open for a brief chat? Now, this came to my performance email, my personal email address, where I do stand-up comedy, etc. And so I get this note from Erki, and what Erki has done is the body of the email is followed by a forwarded message down below, as if it's just this natural, she's been forwarding on an email. It's complete theatre, because there's an email to her, and it says, from Lena, this is to Erki, this is for me to read in the background with the subject line, feels like a great fit. Hi, comma, like, who doesn't mention their colleague's name when they... Anyway, hi, comma, this is supposedly from the COO to the person who reached out to me. Let's go for a personalised approach with them. Came across through my network. They remind me of stand-ups like Patriscan and Madrid Comedy Lab, where we've seen great success. Could you reach out and share a few insights? They might appreciate a fresh take on growing their local fan base, making ticketing easier for audiences and boosting revenue with smarter fees and better sales tools. P.S. I believe Steve Davis could be the right person for us to connect with. Thanks, Lena. So they've faked the sense that there's been this great internal discussion going on about Steve and his ticketing for his comedy shows to try and get past the usual, just another cold one. But secondly, this is interesting, we mentioned Robert Cialdini just before. In his book, Persuasion, he talks about how we are more likely to help someone out if they're asking us on behalf of someone else. I reckon they're trying this influential trick that it's not this person asking me by themselves, but their chief operating officer has asked them to ask me. I think they're having a cheap crack to see if that psychology would work on me responding. Make a sense of this, David.
I think that's one thing they're doing. I think the other thing, when you're teaching people, and any kind of communication is the same, repetition with variation. So the benefits were written one way in the first email, and they're written slightly differently in the second one, but it's the same set of benefits. So there's a desperate hope that, again, this looks like it's a person trying to help someone, which is just about growing their business, so, that's questionable. But also it's the repetition with variation of something we weren't really interested in, but now it's starting to feel familiar. And things that are familiar are more likely to be taken seriously. So there's some fairly sophisticated psychology underpinning something I'm sure they didn't invent, but they copied and modified quite cleverly.
And yet, interestingly, I would be open to it, especially if it was something I was interested in, maybe. But where it falls down is it just stinks of being fake. And so credibility, cha-ching, it just goes straight through the floor.
Well, the whole thing, in the second email, where it's saying they and their.
Yes.
You've personalised one email, you haven't personalised the second email, which has actually undone any goodwill you could have gained by addressing a specific person. So they've got some things psychologically right, and other things they've spectacularly got wrong. It's an interesting combination.
It is, and I should email them back saying, actually, my COO has sent an email for me to tell you that we don't believe a word you just said.
And have a nice day now.
Boom, boom.
Our 4 Ps. Number 4. Perspicacity. The one duty we owe to history is to rewrite it. Oscar Wilde.
David, do you snore?
I would have to ask Karen how often I snore. I assume, being a human being, I snore sometimes.
What would it sound like if you snored?
I would hope it's sort of a nice little...
Wow.
But I'm sure it's not.
That has entered my dream world now. Oh, God.
Where else would I want to go other than to Steve's dream world?
The reason is in Perspicacity in this episode, where we look at typically some old ads and see if they'd work again, we found a ripper from 40 Winks, which is a bed retailer. This is a Tasmanian ad. I wonder if that becomes regional TV or whether it's considered Cap City. I wonder what they get down there.
It kind of explains why it's on an island.
Yes, okay. Have a listen to this particularly bad bed ad.
sale. 40 weeks, 40-hour sale. Save up to 40%, but only for 40 hours. Save up to 40%, but only for 40 hours. 40 weeks, 40-hour sale. 40 weeks, 40-hour sale. Save up to 40%. Save up to 40%, but it just lasts 40 hours. It just lasts 40 hours. Hurry, hurry. Save up to 40% with Wink 40 weeks.
Oh my goodness, I want to just go there to shut them up.
Yep. And I think that's the power of this ad. I can imagine the discount crazed person going, okay, I got the point. Stop. I got the point. Now I don't care.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of advertising is trying to have repetition of messaging, but
cut through. And it cuts through, but in the worst possible way.
Yeah, but it tries to do it in normally a tasteful way, nuanced bit of comedy. This is just taking a sledgehammer out and smashing our heads numerous times in the one commercial. It, you think, must work at one level because it does seem to persist in many markets in many different industries. Typically with furniture retailing, it does seem, or even Tom the Cheap Grocer, where do you get it? Wasn't quite as bad as this.
Yeah.
This is just nothing creative. This is just 40 winks, 40% off.
40 hours.
40.
Yeah, like if they only do the one sale per year and you only have to hear this for one 40-hour block on radio, maybe it's worth annoying people for that 40 hours if you're not going to then annoy them. But you would want to not have radio ads for a while after, or you would want your other ad to be very different.
For my money, because I think you're right, if this is an aberration, it's not like anything else, and it is one-off, and it's used sparingly, well, you get that fresh take of tension and pain, and if someone was in the market, it might prompt them into action because, oh yeah, okay, we'll go now, there's a sense of urgency. But there's not even anything creatively interesting. I'm not even saying majorly creative. There's no effort that has been used at all. It's like the copyright has been said, look, we're 40 winks, we're doing up to 40% off, which has the asterisk, of course. There'll be one thing that's 40% off. And it's 40 hours. And then, let's just repeat that. Whereas other ones like, hello, Frank Walker here from whatever the tile company is, that's done badly, and there's a cluster of ads where they've got a really bad, whiny voice. But it creates its own little genre. It's memorable for a different reason. In fact, there's a dubstep remix of that ad that you can find on Spotify, which one of my sojourners in the Variety Bash played a few times on the car. I think it's even lacking that. And
there's no personality at all. Like, we don't even know who is the 40 Winks person. No. Like, the person doing the voiceover isn't the 40 Winks person because they wouldn't want to risk annoying potential customers that much.
So we would say, we'd rubber stamp this one as saying, use with extreme caution and try never to use ever.
Yeah, I think probably use it for your going out of business sale.
Yes, that's right, because if not, it will certainly help make it a real going out of business sale. I will just say one quick thing. I saw a little bit, just a tiny bit of community TV or country TV when we were in Cooperpedy, I think. We had actual accommodation that night, and there's a really terrible bed ad where it was like, adjustable beds. You have a bed and have it your way. And there was a picture of a queen-size bed where you can adjust the height, either side, and there's just 3 seconds of this man in bed with his partner, a woman, in her side, and her side is about a full mattress width higher than his. And I couldn't believe it. It wasn't drawn to our attention. It was just there as, I know you've got the tool that lets you do that, but why?
But why?
Why are you that high? I mean, the poor man, he got the signal. There was not going to be much action tonight, but it was just the most bizarre image.
Yeah, how is that a selling point?
That is not a selling point. I mean, I got vertigo on her behalf just looking at how high she had her side of the bed. If anything, it was like, oh, I pushed the button, how do I stop it? And she was stuck. Anyway, country TV, God bless it.
Yeah, you can see that people go to bed early so they don't have to watch it.
Sweet dreams, everyone.
And now it's time for snoring.
Give me another one, David.
Thank you for listening to Talking About Marketing. If you enjoyed it, please leave a rating or a review in your favourite podcast app. And if you found it helpful, please share it with others. Steve and David always welcome your comments and questions, so send them to podcast@talkedaboutmarketing.com. And finally, the last word to Oscar Wilde. There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about.